Hello and welcome to one more of our blockchain business models and application webinars. I'm very excited to welcome in class Stefano Tempesta. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Dimitrios, and hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Great. Very happy to welcome you at Swinburne and the Masters of Financial Technologies. How about we'll start our conversation by giving us a bit of an introduction of who you are, what you're actually doing, and how did you start with blockchain, actually?
Okay, that's actually a very good question, because before moving to Australia, I lived in Switzerland, exactly in the Crypto Valley. There is a corridor of startups that between 2016, 2018, 2019 were really popping up like crazy, an incredible business happening over there. Zurich and Zug, the two centers of this Crypto Valley. So I was there, very close also to the headquarters of Ethereum. And all this buzz around blockchain attracted my attention. Not necessarily from a cryptocurrency perspective, but more of how I can use blockchain technology to create an independent, immutable, verifiable digital ledger that I can use in supply chain, document verification, digital identity, and so on. So this attracted my attention. I'm a person of technology. My career has always been in IT, in software development. So for me, this was yet another technology to explore, to master, and potentially apply to resolve challenges of our society, our world. So I jumped into blockchain. I wrote a book about it. I then moved to Australia and collaborated with the Department of Industry on the National Blockchain Roadmap as an advisor to the Digital Identity and Verifiable Credentials Working Group. And here we are. I love everything around blockchain now.
Brilliant. And I'm really excited to get a bit further down into the book. I'm really keen to learn more. You work in one of the biggest companies in the world. So what does your work entail?
Is attention to security, first of all. That's the first mandate. Then there is a component of blockchain in there for sure. There is a component of data protection. But what we have in mind is making the cloud a safer place for any kind of workloads to run. Just to give you very, very briefly a few examples. One that I'm working at the moment is on measuring carbon dioxide in soil, so it can produce regenerative agriculture techniques and fight climate change or improve climate change. Carbon measurement are tracked on a blockchain network and potentially it can be traded. So this is something socially impactful that I love to do. There are a few other things like human trafficking with anti-money laundering. This is again sensitive data sets that have to be shared among different financial institutes. All the transactions are extremely sensitive, obviously, so we need to protect them and prevent them from being leaked to an authorized party, and even make them invisible or opaque to the cloud provider itself. So this is what the technology I look after is all about, making sure the cloud is a more secure place, using blockchain, but it's a bigger picture, it's a bigger than that.
Yeah. So Stefano, looking back to your career so far, what do you think that blockchain technology's best value proposition is? What is the most attractive feature?
Yeah, this is a tricky question, because some people may say, oh, well, everything around the cryptocurrency, the DeFi world is the reason why I jumped into blockchain. And that's fair enough, right? There is a lot of association of blockchain with Bitcoin and the like. So a lot of people jumped into blockchain because of that reason. Maybe the over-promise of getting rich with some speculative investment, but certainly there is much more to blockchain. And this is why, look, I really don't want to do self-promotion, but in my book, I didn't touch a single line about blockchain as a cryptocurrency, as a speculative investment at all. I focus on use cases from the real world where blockchain can be used to remove a need for intermediaries, not removing intermediaries for the sake of not having additional layers in the conversation, but purely to create trust, direct communication among all the parties, transparency in the processes. So this is what blockchain is for me, is creating a technology trust between parties so we can automate business processes and remove any challenges that can be introduced by manual processes and any other level of intermediary.
So Stefano, if I understand correctly, probably you don't agree with the word trustless, but probably it's trust is distributed.
In some way, yes, that's right. That's a good way of putting it.
Okay. An interesting part around blockchain, and again, I'll touch a bit on crypto, but I would like to go further down into some use cases, is particularly in the proof of work consensus algorithm about the environmental footprint. Do you agree, first of all, with this narrative?
I certainly agree, yes.
Okay. So what kind of innovations do you see going forward to reduce that carbon footprint and that environmental footprint?
But look, obviously, this is something that is a problem in the area of cryptocurrency and mining. This is something that who is into Bitcoin can appreciate. It sounds like a challenge. Let me tell you something though. There is a bit of media speculation in that. A lot of the energy that is currently used into mining Bitcoin comes from alternative regenerative sources. It's not only coal. It's not only direct impact on the big energy supply, the energy grid in the world. There are alternative renewable green sources that are highly produced, highly utilized to produce the mining energy. If you think that some of the big miners as organizations are located in Iceland, in Iceland they pretty much have over 90% of renewable energy to supply the energy grid in the country. So there is a point there. I don't want necessarily to defend the Bitcoin story here. There is something that had to be improved for sure. A lot of other blockchain networks are taking a greener approach, moving away from proof of work as a mechanism, which we know is very computational expensive, and to other consensus algorithms like proof of stake and similar. This may prove better, but at the end, what's the price you want to put for trust and security in a network, in a supply chain, for example? If you don't pay on one side, you're gonna pay from another side. So it's a balance at the end, right?
And a personal question: do you have any favorite consensus algorithm mechanism or design that you think that it has great potential?
Yeah, that's a favorite. I certainly look into all of the consensus mechanism with independent eyes. There are pros and cons in all of them. The proof of work is definitely a challenge in the energy consumption. But proof of stake is not immune from some challenges there as well. Thinking that is not very inclusive, is not very decentralized as an algorithm, because at the end the stake that you put in the plate to guarantee your role as a verifier in transactions are those by who has the most that can invest. So in some way it takes away the possibility from less rich, stakers to be part of the network, aggregating also power in the hands of a few. I like an algorithm that is emerging in a few networks that is a sort of a handshake, is a proof of time, is a proof of existence of assets, digital asset. If you prove by time stamping your asset, then when the transaction happens, you have a sort of verification that that specific asset that you own exists at a specific time, and you'll be the first one to create. So it may not apply necessarily to purely public network. It's more in the permission space, the topology of networks where you need to have an identity into it. But it fits really well with the concept of decentralized digital identity that I mentioned as part of the program in Australia here by the Department of Industry, because by having an identity, then all the assets of identity, certificates, diplomas, and everything, licenses that you attach can be time-stamped and verified, and that is proof enough that they are valid, they've been digitally signed, and you don't need to mine additional elements, because once it's done, is proof of time, proof of authenticity, is the process is complete.
Stefano, I'm very keen to ask you, how was your experience working with, the department, with Blockchain Australia, putting together the submission? How did all shape and begin?
Funny enough, it started from a business connection through social networks. I like to do a lot of public speaking and writing articles. So by having this sort of exposure, I've been contacted through a professional network by Chloe White,
oh, yes,
who was the lead into this program. And Chloe said, look, we want to know a bit more about you. Not necessarily my personal experience, but the experience of my company in blockchain. And we start the conversation. And then they open up this opportunity to advise, to collaborate with the Department of Industry on the National Blockchain Roadmap. And there were different working groups, financials, supply chain. I picked digital identity and credentials because I see this as more impactful, not just for Australia, but globally. This can solve the problem of billions of people around the world. And I'm serious about this. There are over 1 billion people in the world that don't have an identity at all. And I'm not saying a digital identity like your Microsoft or Google account or your Facebook or Twitter. I'm talking about documents at all. So this prevents people from access to education, employment, any rights that they may have in their own country. By creating an identity that is not owned by anybody except yourself, a self-sovereign identity, hopefully we can create a system for enabling the forgotten to have access to better services.
Stefano, because this is really exciting, would you mind sharing a little bit more on this sovereign identity? How does it actually work?
That's interesting, because there are a lot of, there is a heated debate at the moment. There are a lot of conversations. I guess one of the challenges is making everybody agree on what is an identity that we want to share and certify and verify. The way it works basically is, let's start a little bit from understanding what is our current identity. Any sort of identity like your passport or driving license are issued by a government agency. So they own your identity in some way, and they issue a certificate in the form of passport or the plastic card for the driving license that you can use for showing the identity and someone else to verify that you own it. There are also identities, for example, in the context of the universities, so academic element of identities that are your transcript as a student, or obviously your certificate of completion of study, and so on. Anything that identifies something that you are and you do is a piece of identity. But again, this is owned by someone, in this case, the university. And then there is the digital identity, your Microsoft account, your Google account, your Facebook account, any account with a username, a password, with an email address that you use to authenticate into a system. And again, this is owned by that organization. Now, a personal experience. I'm not Australian. I'm originally from Italy. I immigrated into Australia, and I had to go through the process of immigration, providing evidence of a degree certificate, knowledge of English, skills assessment, and so on. So plenty of documents. And I did complete university over 20 years ago back in Italy. So I had to go there, ask for the certificate, translate into English. It took, can't remember, 2-3 weeks, all this process.
And also money, quite expensive.
Money, yeah, money and time, yes, of course. How about all of this is already there in a decentralized, distributed network, and then I can just point the Department of Immigration, Home Affairs, to say, hey, this is my identity token, go and verify. And also, not go and verify what you don't need. This is the beauty of self-sovereign identity, that I decide what I want to share with you. You want to assess my knowledge of English? I share with you my English test. You want to assess my degree certificate? I share my degree certificate. You don't need to know anything else that I don't want to share with you, because I own my identity. I own all the elements, and then I enable sharing what I want to share. The verification is immediate, is a transaction on a network, stored on a blockchain for recording purposes as an immutable record of transaction, and agree between the two parties. It's completely confidential, because as I initiate a transaction with you authority, we exchange encryption keys, which enable the transaction to be completely encrypted only between the two parties. If someone else, a third party, a rogue attack happens in this communication, they simply cannot decrypt the information, because it's encrypted with an asymmetric mechanism that pretty much prevents anybody from access to this confidential information. Now, there is a challenge I mentioned before. The challenge is, where do we store these identities, right? Because you can say, yes, I can store on my mobile device, I can store on my computer. The challenge is that I can lose my mobile device, I can lose my computer. So how do I bring all of this along with me? So the initiative that large organizations and governments are discussing together is to create identity hubs. These hubs are independent containers, open source, managed by identity providers that are completely decentralized and contain elements of identities of everybody in the world with a digital identity. Now think a little bit like a DSN server, a DNS server. A DNS is a domain name service that allows the internet to work. Internet will not work without a DNS. And these are completely decentralized services that resolve a name to an IP address. When you type in the browser, University of Swinburne.com.au, you will this DNS server will resolve to an IP address that identifies the server or the website of the university. Without this, it will not work. Identity hubs are exactly the same. You type Stefano Tempesta, and then you access the identity hub of Stefano, authorize the transaction, exchange the encryption keys with the university, if I want the university to verify my credential, and also agree. Dear university, don't get access to my, I don't know, medical record, right? You don't care about my medical record. But what you do care is about my proficiency of English or whatever, address or whatever, right? So you decide, initiate the communication and say, these are only the elements that you can select from my identity, and I authorize you to have access only to this, and that.
How are the discussions going? Is Australia progressing in this space?
Definitely progressing. The conversation is progressing in two ways. One, a bit more academic in some way. So we produce a white paper. The white paper has been delivered to the government, to the department, and I assume at some point they will consolidate all the different works from the different committees and produce an outcome. It's a white paper that describes recommendation, best practices, of how Australia should progress in that direction. The other one is actually a bit more tangible. I bet it will interest also some of the students here at the university. The government is allocating funds for initiatives on digital identity, supply chain, and any other blockchain-related projects. And these funds, in the order of millions of dollars, are available to local domestic startups that operate in this space. So if there are some out there of you that have an entrepreneurial mindset, please watch out this space, especially the Department of Industry or National Blockchain Roadmap. Also, a very good point of reference is Blockchain Australia, the organization that is a non-profit and looks after the adoption and promotion of blockchain in the country, because often there are these announcements of this sort of funds that are available to support startups, entrepreneurship in the country.
And Stefano, in terms of the Australian blockchain roadmap, what's the ultimate vision there? What is the ultimate objective?
To enable these services, so to make this happen, is a roadmap that describes how social services will improve or will enhance by leveraging blockchain technology. If you think that other countries or other cities like Dubai, for example, have already initiated this process a few years ago, I was briefly involved into some of those processes when I was back in India. They have, and I think they have completed by now, over 80 processes for public service on blockchain. It can be as simple as pay for your Rigo, your car registration, to anything like real estate and verification of ownership of land and so on. So this is the roadmap. The roadmap is to initiate some of this transformation on a digital format, and this digital format includes also blockchain from an independent verification perspective.
Now, 1 month ago, you announced the publication of your book, Blockchain Applied.
That's right.
Has been published by Routledge. Before we go into the book details, a personal question for you is, what kind of need is it covering, and how did you actually decide to write a book together with Stefan Ashurst?
Yes. Stefan is a brilliant writer and professional in blockchain based in the UK. And he and I were discussing, there are a lot of books and there are a lot of people in general that talk about blockchain, and but they're always saying what blockchain can be. What is the big promise of blockchain? Blockchain is going to be the next big revelation, the next big thing in IT. And this has been happening for a few years. It was end of 2019, so a couple of years ago, where I completed my move from the crypto valley in Switzerland to Australia, settled here, stay in contact, in touch with Steven, and we say, but why nothing is happening? Why, or better, it is happening, but why people are still saying, still keep on telling the story, blockchain is going to be the next big thing, but it is actually happening. Steven and I have been involved in several projects that actually do what blockchain is expected to do. I started my connection with the Department of Industry here and a few other startups in Australia that do blockchain for farming, climate change, for token rewards. So there are a few initiatives, and I say, why we don't write a book that actually say what we have done rather than what blockchain can do? So the book is our experience on what blockchain is and we have done rather than what blockchain can do in the future. We want to tell the story that blockchain is a success story today. Of course, there is so much that can be done yet, but we don't want to sell promises. We are just sharing the experience and hope that readers find this an inspiration point to start coming up with even better ideas and better projects.
So, Stefano, if I play a little bit the devil's advocate, by reading the title, I see enterprise blockchain. So for me, how, let's say, pretentious is to talk about blockchain on an enterprise level, since blockchain needs to be decentralized?
Okay, I see what you mean. Our definition of enterprise there is probably more into separating from a completely public anonymous blockchain connected to crypto. And because we intentionally didn't want to go into that space, so we're not talking about decentralized finance. We're not touching. There is something around fund management as the use case, but not much into DeFi as we know today. But to answer your question, the enterprise today, so the business world today, definitely see blockchain as an opportunity, although this opportunity is not fully realized. Even financial institutions are looking into blockchain to decentralize their network. Today, processing thousands of transactions per day by credit card providers, banks, is an incredibly expensive process. And whoever has done IT in the world, they know that centralizing all their infrastructure is an incredible cost, not only because you need to pay for these servers, but also all the services around it, high availability, disaster recovery, backup and restore processes, security, obviously. So blockchain has a built-in redundancy because it's decentralized by design, by the nature of it. So just looking into decentralizing this network, creating a peer-to-peer network, will obtain economies of scale, massive savings from an infrastructure perspective. So this is what we are observing, what we have observed in a few use cases that we have described in the book. The blockchain in this enterprise world, yes, it is a bit more centralized in the sense that is not permission networks or consortium. You want to have an invite to join, you need to have an identity. It's not purely anonymous, but at the end, if you want to build your digital identity and verify your documents, your medical records, your certificates, or you want to be involved into a supply chain where every stage of the supply chain moves automatically because conditions of products and goods on the supply chain are verified by smart contracts, you do need to have an identity. You can't operate completely anonymous. And this is the power of decentralizing technology, but still using an identity mechanism for processing, transactions between parties.
So Stefano, would you say that probably the future lies within more permissioned or hybrid networks?
The future is twofold. The future is for both. There is a blockchain with a centralized component that is that's not entirely true. That's not what I meant to say, because it is true today that we do have a link, a tied to the centralized identity. But as we develop also the concept of DID, or the decentralized identity, that that bottleneck in some way of having an enterprise identity can even be removed. So all the parties on a blockchain that bring their own identity, that can still be decentralized. So we can have a decentralized identity, decentralized storage, decentralized digital ledger for transactions. So the future is decentralized for sure, also in the enterprise space. It's not a short window, because the enterprise is so much into controlling in some way the identities, that is going to take a significant shift in technology and mindset of people before going there. So that is one aspect. The other aspect, the purely public blockchain for financial purposes will stay and will get stronger and stronger. It will go through winters and bullish moments for sure, up and down as a roller coaster in the Bitcoin evaluation. That's absolutely fine. But at the same time, it will generate interest in a broader audience. I have a little theory of my own. The boom of DeFi in the last couple of years, I think in some way has been also connected to this isolation that we've been forced to live because of COVID. We used to go to our financial advisor in the bank for asking for advice on where to invest, or even delegate completely our portfolio of investment to experts. And then suddenly we couldn't do this any longer. Speaking money, having a call on Zoom or the like probably is not as effective as going in the branch of a bank, shaking hands, and find an agreement. At least for me, psychologically speaking, I trust someone that I see rather than someone that is digitally there. And I don't know if I'm talking to a bot or not. By the way, Dimitrios, are you a real person or you're a bot? So these sort of things. And then we learn by yourself how to do finance. I learned by myself how to do investment into different products. I was a person that would trust someone else to do it on my behalf. Now, I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but I'm certainly more familiar with some of the DeFi processes and products. And then DeFi had an incredible boom of interest in the last 18 months.
If I would ask you to pick the three most powerful or most favorable use cases that are described in the book, which ones would these be?
Okay, let me think about it. Healthcare is one that I particularly love and look after, simply because there is a social impact on it. We can have the possibility to share medical records safely, securely among different healthcare institutes, hospitals, and this will provide a larger data set for consortium to generate more insights into data without the risk of leaking PII, personal identifiable information. If you think of a machine learning algorithm for development or detection of disease, development of drugs, detection of cancer in images of patients, this machine learning requires massive data sets in input, and machine learning works. The larger data sets, the better, because the historical data that can be processed to identify patterns and train models is larger. So by doing that, without again the risk of leaking data, then we can produce a more accurate prediction, reduce false positive, and provide better services. So healthcare is out there, one of my top. The other one, I'm second moment of self-promotion. I'm working on a second book, still about blockchain, but blockchain for good. So for all these humanitarian, society impactful projects, like carbon measurement and trading, as I mentioned, land registry. For me, land registry is critical. There are countries where ownership of land is controversial. It's not exactly measured, and it opens up to dispute, even within families. So by storing exact measurements of land on an immutable registry and having the possibility to verify this quickly, we can prevent fraud, dispute, and any other kind of conflict. And then you ask for a third one. Well, the third one, I think, is not a use case per se, but is more of the foundation of all of it, which is the self-sovereign digital identity. So creating these identity hubs with the blockchain transactions for verification of the transaction itself, and storing of all these communication between parties, verification. For me, it is the foundation. Without this DID protocol foundation service, we cannot have any other service on top of it.
And is there any use case that got you surprised or got you by, saying, oh, I hadn't thought about this, but yes, this might work?
Okay. I guess I wasn't entirely clear on some aspect of convergence of blockchain with machine learning, with Internet of Things. The IoT network is a peer-to-peer network to some extent, but is strongly attached to devices, physical devices, sensors that measure measures like humidity, temperature, locations, this sort of things. So I was a little bit surprised, when Stephen and I discussed one of the chapters on how synergies can be found, in different technologies, and how blockchain can still support this kind of decentralized network of real devices. I was always associating blockchain more to the digital world, the digital transaction. But the reality is that even a device has a unique ID, so a unique identifier that is unique in the world. So that device can only exist as one element, and the communication that the device enables is transactions that can be towards another device itself, so a peer-to-peer transaction, or it can be towards a cloud hub for collecting all the measurement and storing in it. When collecting all these measurements into a cloud hub, you generate millions or billions of transactions in a very short term. So this produces an incredible valuable data set for additional AI, deep learning, machine learning capabilities to produce insight into this. So one use case that I found interesting and surprising to some extent is self-driving vehicles. Are using blockchain, IoT, and deep learning, so everything combined together, to create a secure driving experience. The component of blockchain is to make sure that whatever happens, whatever decision is taken by the vehicle, whatever decision is taken by the deep learning algorithm is stored in a ledger that is transparent and visible to everybody. Because if, no, say in the event that an accident happens, you need to verify whether a wrong decision was made and fix the algorithm to prevent this from happening again.
Right. That sounds really exciting, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, Stefano, based on your experience, your research with the book, your current work, where do you see still some major challenges in the blockchain landscape that companies are working towards?
Companies are working into interoperability. This is lacking a lot. And look, it is sort of natural, right? When everybody gets excited about something, a new technology, everybody jumps on it, but then it diverges in a lot of different forks of Bitcoin, Ethereum, proprietary blockchain, programming languages that have incredibly fancy names. I don't get it. I mean, for me, this is incredibly frustrating, to be honest. I like to see myself, as really a citizen of the world, where I travel and I want to have the experience of plugging my laptop anywhere. But then I travel to Italy, I travel to Switzerland, I travel to the US, I travel to Australia, well, at least when I could travel. And every time I have to bring with me a plug adapter, because every time there is a different plug. This is so frustrating, right? No one likes that. And now the same is happening with blockchain. You go around and say, okay, there is this blockchain that is optimized for this other blockchain that does that. There is a blockchain that is a fork of this other blockchain, but I want to do it because it's my own. And then there is this programming language that has a fancy name and is different from this programming language because I use a comma instead of a dot at the end, right? I mean, I'm simplifying, but the concept here is there are a lot of initiatives that are creating a completely diversified offering in the space, which we have observed a lot in the past in other technologies, but eventually we know from people that work in IT in this sector, eventually they will consolidate. There will be major acquisitions. There will be someone that will disappear because they are too small to have a significant impact on the market. And then you will end up with a few significant players that dominate the market. We don't want to go into monopoly, obviously. That is absolutely the opposite of what we are for here. But certainly we don't want to deal also with 25,000 different solutions, right? 25 is okay, 2,500 is too much. So I see the future being in interoperability, as in all these blockchains being able to communicate to each other, and eventually some will disappear and the market will consolidate.
Do you believe that the recent Ethereum upgrade will try to solve some of these problems?
Oh, gosh, I've been waiting for this Ethereum to go on for a long time. Yes, that is a big challenge. Look, I can't comment on the struggle that they're having. There is certainly a challenge of scalability that has to be addressed. There is a challenge of fees that came up, also gas fees, right? That came up significantly because of the boom of the NFT. Now, a lot of people are doing NFTs, so there is a lot of transactions that are happening on the Ethereum network, and the fees are going up. So that is a challenge because prevents scalability, prevents adoption, and favor the opposite. Other blockchains are coming up as an alternative to storing your NFTs, your crypto asset somewhere else. So yes, I really hope that Ethereum is able to progress their promise to a more scalable solution, a more competitive offering, and that would be quite revolutionary in some way.
Do you have any other networks under your radar that you are observing, or you are looking and you see some interesting value propositions?
I do, yes. Well, now in some way, going a little bit against what I mentioned before, there is a network called Silo that is a fork of Ethereum. I don't like too much when we fork something because again, it creates this differentiation that is not really beneficial. But in this case, the fork has produced the opportunity to move away from proof of work and introduce a proof of stake on Ethereum. And the Silo network has been used by a company here in Australia to create a tokenization mechanism to reward farmers in emerging countries. So the good impact that this solution is providing, from helping out farmers in emerging countries, I think it justifies the adoption of a fork of Ethereum. I would love to have it done on Ethereum. It couldn't. I still am advisor to this organization, and we say, look, Silo is good because you can still write your Solidity smart contracts, so you have a future-proof compatibility with Ethereum, but running on Ethereum at the moment, it would be incredibly expensive. Considering that it's a non-profit organization, you want to limit your cost. So that one is a good one to have a look. It's a celo.org. And the other one that is particularly attractive is Stratis. Stratis platform is a small one, but is growing a lot of interest because it can differentiate what you can do. It's not optimized for something in particular, it's a generic purpose. So if you think of the Bitcoin or the Ethereum network, especially for this kind of more DeFi applications, Stratis is a general purpose blockchain that can be coded, can be developed in a variety of programming languages, and easy to use, easy to implement, easy to scale as well. Stefano, and again, all these are open source, so they're all broadly available and easily accessible.
Brilliant. Stefano, thank you so much. It was really exciting and it's very, very insightful. And looking forward to welcoming you back face to face, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, we totally have to
class.
do something in the campus.
Brilliant.
Sure.
So